The passage states, as Soviet power declined, the world became, to some extent, multipolar, and Europe strove to define an independent identity. What a journey Europe has undertaken to reach this point. It had in every century changed its internal structure and invented new ways of thinking about the nature of international order. Now, at the culmination of an era, Europe, in order to participate in it, felt obliged to set aside the political mechanisms through which it had conducted its affairs for 3.5 centuries. Impelled also by the desire to cushion the emergent unification of Germany, the new European Union established a common currency in 2002 and a formal political structure in 2004. It proclaimed a Europe united, whole, and free, adjusting its differences by peaceful mechanisms. Now let's check with the options. Option 1 states Europe has consistently changed its internal structure to successfully adapt to the changing world order. Extremely limited. We have the only aspect of consistent change in this statement. It had in every century changed its internal structure and invented new ways of thinking about the nature of international order. We see elsewhere, yeah, we see here the world became, as Soviet power declined, the world became to some extent multipolar. Europe strove to define an independent identity. We also see it here, the culmination of an era. Europe, in order to participate in it, felt obliged to set aside the political mechanisms through which it had conducted its affairs for 3.5 centuries. Impelled also by the desire to cushion the emergent unification of Germany, the new European Union established a common currency, and so on. So we see that at least some of the changes in the internal structure, at least recently, the recent ones, if not throughout the centuries, have been somewhat forced. If they're not forced, they are not they're not consistent. We can see that from felt obliged and impelled. So the only reference that this particular statement, that this option one gives us, is in this particular statement. In every century, changed its internal structure, invented new ways of thinking about the nature of international order. So this is extremely limited, doesn't quite work. We can eliminate option one. A summary has to take rather the entire passage into consideration. Two states. The establishment of a formal political structure in Europe was hastened by the unification of Germany and the emergence of a multipolar world. Seems perfectly fine. We have the establishment of a formal political structure. So we are talking about changes in Europe, hastened by the unification of Germany and the emergence of a multipolar world. So world becoming multipolar, Europe undertaking change, both these aspects, and then we have unification of um, Germany thrown in. So that doesn't make too much of a difference. So we can qualify two as a valid answer. Option three states Europe has consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order, and that has culminated in a united Europe. Again, this is very similar. First, it is similar to the first option. Europe has consistently changed. So that we have seen that it makes this option also extremely limited. Consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order, and that has culminated in a united Europe. Not exactly. It proclaimed a Europe united, whole, and free, adjusting its differences by peaceful mechanisms. So it has not necessarily culminated in a united Europe yet. This means what we have in the passage means that the European nations are trying. Europe as a whole is trying, but that doesn't mean that it has succeeded. So both ways, three doesn't work out. We can eliminate option three. Option four states Europe has chosen to lower political and economic heterogeneity in order to adapt itself to an emerging multipolar world. Now, in comparison, we find that against 2, we have a much better choice in 4. 4 talks about Europe and also talks about lowering political and economic heterogeneity. Heterogeneity, mind you, diversity, diversification, even. It means exactly what the passage says, that Europe has begun, it has started to develop a system where Europe, in order to participate in the world order, let's say, felt obliged to set aside political mechanisms. We have political heterogeneity set aside, through which it had conducted its affairs for 3.5 centuries, impelled also by the desire to cushion the emergent unification of Germany. The new European Union establishes a common currency in 2002, formal political structure in 2004, again, political and economic heterogeneity, in order to adapt itself to an emerging multipolar world. So the world has become to some extent multipolar. It's emerging as a largely multipolar world. And for that, Europe is basically adapting itself and getting there. In comparison, we see that the establishment of a formal political structure does not cover the entire aspect. This phrase in 4 is much better, chosen to lower political and economic heterogeneity. That makes much more sense. And here also, in the emergence of a multipolar world is common between both the options. We have the unification of Germany, which can be included inside of the aspect of the emergence of a multipolar world. So overall, we see that 4 gives us a much more universal, a much more balanced, a much more um, all pervasive, covering the entire passage, such kind of an answer. While 2, in comparison, 2 in itself would have been a decent answer, but in comparison to 4, in comparison with 4, 2 is definitely a little more limited, a little more inferior. So in retrospect, we can eliminate option 2 and we can qualify option 4. Our answer thus is option 4, the most appropriate answer here.